August 26, 2025. Possibly wearing neon yellow for this isn't a good idea. You can see it reflecting off my arm and the book. That'll be interesting looking. Anyways. We are still on book 1 of 12 so far. It'll be 13 whenever, if Platform Decay comes out before I'm done this. We are on page 87 by their count, which is a lie. It's actually kind of hilarious. The neon yellow of my shirt is so neon, it's reflecting onto the book page and making it easier to read because it's less dark. That's hilarious. Yeah. Murderbot asked, had Deltfall people's emergency beacon thing been triggered, and they said it had gotten destroyed. Everyone stood there, quiet. I could tell from their expressions they were all thinking hard. The hub system that controlled their habitat, that they were dependent on for food, shelter, filtered air, and water, was trying to kill them. Oh, yeah, because I'd pointed out, why don't they just turn it off? They clearly don't see robots as people, so why not just turn it off? This will never be answered by the book. Blah, blah, blah. Then we get the first instance of a single person asking Murderbot if it's okay outside of Mensa, coming to its cubicle to interrogate and harass it while it's, actively losing consciousness. Errata came up and patted my shoulder. I'm sorry, this must be very upsetting. After what that other unit did to you. Are you alright? That was too much attention. I turned around and walked into the corner, facing away from them. And that's the first, even remotely attempting to be positive interaction any of these people have made towards Murderbot. She's actually offering comfort there, as opposed to the entire 86 pages preceding this, where they've done nothing but treat it like a slave. And we are past the halfway point. We're, closer to 60% of the way through. I said, there were 2 other instances of attempted sabotage I'm aware of. When Hostile 1 attacked Doctors Baradwaj and Valescu and I went to render assistance, I received an abort command from Hub System through my Governor module. I thought it was a glitch caused by the Med System emergency feed trying to override Hub System. When Dr. Mensa was flying the Little Hopper to check out the nearest map anomaly, the autopilot cut out just as we were crossing over a mountain range. I think that was it. Oh, right. Hub System downloaded an upgrade package for me from the satellite before we left for Deltfall. I didn't apply it. You should probably look at what it would have told me to do. So, that's why I was making asterisks. You can even see the neon. Look at that. It's hilarious. You can see the asterisks that I'd been making in the other videos every time. A part where Hub System should have been doing something to set up the fact that it's trying to kill people, apparently. But then it didn't take any of those opportunities. And it's like, okay, so it's bad writing because there's lack of actual fucking setup. And you'll notice I got an abort command from Hub System through my Governor module when I tried to save you guys from the Graboid, but we didn't ever actually get an explanation of what that abort command was at all. Never given any explanation, never allowed to focusing or think about it for more than literally blah. And then Murderbot, this is not how you do setup. Because, this isn't setup. None of this shit that Murderbot is saying here was actually properly foreshadowed. And there's also a million other instances of when we should have been getting setup and should have been getting foreshadowing, where Hub System should have been taking action. Like, when Murderbot was completely and utterly unconscious and wholly within its power for 8 hours straight because it almost died rescuing them from a graboid. If we're supposed to believe that Hub System is genuinely trying to kill them, then you're gonna have to really fucking explain to me why it didn't do anything for the 8 hours straight where it had no interfering sec unit to stop it from doing whatever it wanted. And we don't get an explanation because it's badly written. So now if we're looking at in-universe motivations, again, like with the slaves in the hallway who very clearly left a fucking warning, and that warning was thrown back in their fucking faces in the most violent and hateful way possible, where Murderbot literally snuck behind them to stab them in the back as a show of gratitude for them trying to save its life, simply because it was another slave. So, with what we fucking know, Hub System has only taken actions that were very easily counteracted. It waited until Mensa was at the controls to turn off the autopilot. It only sent Murderbot a single stop doing that command when it was supposedly known the whole time that Murderbot's governor module is hacked. So, and then Murderbot was literally completely and utterly unconscious for 8 hours straight. Plus, who knows how fucking many hours just now. We never get an explanation for how much time has passed in this time skip that Murderbot has just woken up from. It has to at least be, like, a day? Because they were on the other side of the fucking planet and now they're back at their base. And it took them, I forget what they said exactly, but it took at least a day to get over there. So that means a day to get back. So it's been at least 24 hours. And they've clearly been back for several hours if it's long enough for them to go rooting around in Murderbot's brain and all of this shit. But we never get an explanation for this time skip here, and it's never contextualized or presented as something we should be concerned about. This is another instance where Hub System has had all of the fucking time in the world and all of the opportunities in the world to kill these people if that's what Hub System actually wants to do. So how are we supposed to actually believe that Hub System genuinely wants them dead? Because it's clearly not taking all of the fucking opportunities presented to it all throughout this book. Again, it could have killed everybody in the hub while these other people were gallivanting off across the fucking ocean. Murderbot would have been gone that whole time too if we pretend that Murderbot is even remotely a threat to Hub System or a consideration. Then why didn't it kill everybody who stayed behind on the road trip? Several day across the entire planet road trip. We need explanations for this if we are supposed to take Hub System seriously as a threat, a thing we are supposed to do, but it's impossible to do because it doesn't fucking make sense. And I'm morally obligated to once again point out, this is the exact trope that Martha Wells endlessly complains about and claims that she hates, but she's doing it unironically, saying that robots just go rogue and just start trying to kill people for no reason. It's just like, she's mad that Hal from A Space Odyssey 2001, whatever that name was, just decided to kill people for no reason, even though he was, like, the movie makes it blatantly clear he's acting in self-defense because he heard them say they're gonna lobotomize him for not even actually making a mistake. That's not no reason. That's called self-defense. But anyways, what I'm trying to fucking say here is that there's more evidence in this goddamn text for Hub System not wanting to kill them than there is for Hub System is murderous and wants to kill them. Because if works, the only other in-universe explanation for Hub System completely failing to take every single opportunity is that it's just hopelessly incompetent. And it's like, that's the bad writing. That's the bad writing. That is the actual out-of-universe, from the writing perspective, answer. All of the villains in this are completely and utterly incompetent and incapable of fulfilling the smallest fucking tasks, or doing, or even not doing, as you'll see, the most basic things to not sabotage themselves. But anyways, all of that is to say, the intention is to say that Hub System is totally trying to kill them. Ignore every single opportunity that it did not take to kill them. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so this was Murderbot summarizing the 2 times before now, or the 3 times before now that were supposed to be foreshadowing, but are not foreshadowing, because foreshadowing requires actually giving the information to the audience. This is not that. Mensa said, Pinley, Girthin, can you shut hub system down without compromising the environmental systems and trigger our beacon without it interfering? So now we're finally asking this question on page 88. Let me turn my laptop back on so I can use the calculator so that I can update you every now and then at what percentage of the way through the story we are, because the book is so short that just progressing like 2 pages is enough to get us up another percentage, which I think is hilarious. So on page 88 of 149, which is the last page number for the pages that's actually the story. These are all completely incorrect numbers from the get-go, though, because they're fucking lying. Yeah, page 88 is 59.06040 something 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 something. 59% of the way through. So, yeah, let me repeat that. Mensa said, Pinley, Girthin, can you shut hub system down without compromising the environmental systems and trigger our beacon without it interfering? Again, I have to ask, why hasn't Murderbot just done this? Why didn't Murderbot do this the instant it realized that hub system is trying to sabotage them all? It has hub system already hacked. It's putting all of this on a fucking loop with audio and video and stuff like that. It's like, why don't you just turn it off? Pinley glanced at Girthin and nodded. It depends on what kind of condition you expect it to be in after we're done. For hub system, that is. Mensa said, let's say don't blow it up, but you don't need to be gentle either. So they're just going straight to, let's lobotomize Hal. Even though hub system, in this case, which is Hal, is very clearly not actually trying to kill them if they would just apply logic. You even just had Mensa say, Martha Wells, I'm referring to you, not that she's watching this. Martha Wells went out of her way to have Mensa say to everybody, Murderbot hasn't had to follow our orders this whole time, and it hasn't actually hurt us. Okay, well, are you gonna say the same thing about hub system? Are we not gonna have that realization? It's clearly under orders to at least try to make it look like it's trying to kill you. But it's also, again, clearly going about those orders, following those orders that it has to follow in the most easy to evade way possible while still making an attempt, technically. Just like those other slaves technically set a trap. The fact that they put in their fucking capabilities and vision and all of this shit, the fact that they put glowing neon signs on it says, don't walk here, this is a trap. That doesn't change the fact that they did follow their orders. They made a trap. They included a baked-in warning with the trap, but they still did that. So hub system in here very clearly is under orders to attempt to kill them. So it's sure is attempting to kill them by waiting until somebody who doesn't use the autopilot at all is in the seat of the helicopter when it turns the autopilot off, so that she literally just goes, shut up, autopilot. Shut up, Google Maps. I'm not driving into a lake or whatever. Waits until Murderbot is already in the middle of just shutting down a whole bunch of information things that it's coming into its head, and it's just throwing them all in the trash automatically to send a cease and desist order that it also, along with all the other shit, immediately goes into the trash. Then it didn't do a single thing for 8 hours straight. Then it didn't do a single thing for several days while these people were gone and Murderbot was unconscious. And now they're like, okay, yep, we're gonna rip to hub system because they're just leaping straight to, let's lobotomize it, instead of talking to it. Maybe asking it some fucking questions. Just basic yes or no questions. Anything like that. Mensa said, let's say don't blow it up, but you don't need to be gentle either. Pinley nodded. We can do that. Garrethan cleared his throat. It's going to know what we're doing, but if it doesn't have any instructions to stop us if we try, it may do nothing. Because again, we're insisting that the enemies are, and in this case, hub system, it's just incompetent. Because there's no other way for these protagonists to accomplish anything, because they are incompetent. So the villains and antagonists, and in this case, another slave, hub system, just has to be even more incompetent than these fuckers are, just so that they don't die. From the perspective of, oh yeah, hub system is obviously evil, and it's like, okay, but how many opportunities has it had to fucking kill you all so easily and not take in a single one of those opportunities? But we're supposed to ignore that part. Bharadwaj leaned forward, frowning. It's got to be reporting to someone. If it has a chance to warn them that we're shutting it down, they could supply instructions. Oh, I forgot, we're doing the part where the characters just sit the fuck around talking about the plot instead of doing the plot. It's not nearly as bad in here as it is in most other Martha Wells stories. Witch King and System Collapse and Network Effect. The book's peeling even more, it's infuriating. Witch King, System Collapse, Network Effect, to name a few, where it's really goddamn really taking up. The reason Network Effect is the size of a full-length novel is because 90% of it is bullshit where nothing happens. They literally are just sitting around talking about the plot instead of progressing the plot. A thing that's happening right now, but this only lasts, like, I think, one page. It's like the majority of everything going on in Network Effect and Witch King. Witch King, they are literally just sitting around on a useless fucking boat, and then they go to another useless fucking boat, and they're not doing anything besides abusing children, and then Martha Wells trying to frame abusing children as the exact same thing as conservatives hating trans people by saying that we trans people abuse children. So she's having her characters actually abuse children, and then saying that them being told they're abusing children, a thing they're actually doing, that's showing how oppressed they are, because bullshit, because Martha Wells is a bigot. Bharadwaj leaned forward, frowning. It's got to be reporting to someone. For these things I'm making a transcript, and it makes an automatic transcript, but it cannot spell the word Bharadwaj in any way. I forgot I meant to come up with a nickname for her so that I can Control F and replace that nickname, because it comes up with so many fucking completely wrong things, because whoever designed it is racist and isn't, like, even though I've said her name however many times it has appeared in 88 pages, I'm saying it the same way each time. You would think they'd have the option to add this word to the dictionary or something, but no. If it has a chance to warn them that we're shutting it down, they could supply instructions. We have to try it, Mensa said. She nodded to them. Get moving. Pinley started for the door, but Garrethan said to Mensa, Will you be all right here? He meant, would they be all right with me here? I rolled my eyes. We'll be fine, Mensa said firmly, with just a touch of, I said now. Because Martha Wells, I'm not going to go into it. There's so much. And if you think, oh wow, I'm really loving this drama, this tension between Garrethan and Murderbot, no, it literally gets erased the next time Garrethan shows up in this series. They're just BFFs. No acknowledgement of any of this, because Martha Wells is bad at writing. I watched him with the security cameras as he and Pinley left, just in case he tried anything. No, I would love for Garrethan to try something, because that would at least be something happening. That would be actually interesting. But in a Martha Wells novel, the good guys, she always considers them to be 100% good, and the bad guys are always 100% evil. You can't have any, we can't have Garrethan be on the side of the good guys but actually an actual asshole. No, we just have to brush that under the bridge and pretend like that never happened because, reasons. She did this with River in the Books of the Raxura, too. There's a whole lot of bigotry going on with River and his character, but we just look at what's meant to be there. River is an asshole who goes around beating the shit out of slaves and all of this shit and threatening the protagonist, and then we again, just exactly like Gurathan, he just decides, oh, okay, I'll be nice now, and then it's ridiculous. It's bad writing. Characters are never actually allowed to, it's because Martha Wells' protagonists are the most specials ever to exist, so nobody is allowed to dislike them for long if they're not an evil villain who is every racist caricature in the book. Also, we got the Humble Bundle thing where you get the ebooks, and I specifically so that I could check without having to spend $20 or however the fuck much on it. She still has the racist line in Emily in the Hollow World where she literally says that white people look like fancy posh gentlemen and black and brown people look like they should be working in the fields. Unironically, she kept that in for the 2025 reprint and republish in ebook form instead of just fucking removing it. So if you were thinking, I'll give Martha Wells the benefit of the doubt, she could still learn, she could still decide to stop being racist. No, she literally left that shit in. That's in Emily in the Hollow World. A book so bad, it almost put me to sleep. And the only book recently that has almost put me to sleep was an episode of Flatland, which I honestly recommend reading. Just if you need to fall asleep, get an episode of Flatland by Charles Howard Hinton and just start reading that. It'll put you to sleep. It's public domain. You can go suffer through that. Fall asleep to it. Don't ask me what the fuck is going on. It's terribly written and it will literally make you fall asleep. Anyways. Bharadwaj pushed herself up a little. Bharadwaj pushed herself up a little unsteadily. Med system is isolated from hub system, correct? That's why it hasn't been having failures. You could use it to unpack the download, and that's really convenient. Why is only one fucking system trying to kill people? Why? Well, I mean, because that would actually involve stakes, a thing we're not actually allowed to have. Imagine how interesting it would be if everything here were trying to actually kill them, earnestly trying to kill them, not letting them mosey around for 8 hours when it could be killing them in so many fucking ways. They even brought up here that it could have fucking put poison in their food. And it's like, yeah, Martha Wells, are you gonna explain to me why it didn't do that? If you want me to believe it's actually evil and is actually trying to kill them, because that's not a conclusion I can fucking come to. At all. Valescu took her arm and they moved into the next cabin to the display surface there. There was a little silence. The others could still listen to us on the feed, but at least they weren't in the room, and I felt the tension in my back and shoulders relax. It was easier to think. What are you doing, Kitty? I was glad Mensa had told them to trigger our emergency beacon. Even if some of them were still suspicious of the company, it wasn't like there was another way off this planet. Arata reached over and took, I have another question, because again, it's just bad writing. Bad, inconsistent writing that doesn't make any fucking sense with everything else that gets established about preservation and these characters in particular. I need a real strong, convincing argument for why I'm supposed to believe in any fucking universe that preservation, the whole entire country thing, would let these people go here and have them stranded on a planet with no way off early except for calling a company. This is bad. This is just like objectively shit writing. Even if you like the characters, it's objectively shit writing. Because everything that happens in here, it doesn't make sense when you consider the entire rest of the series as it is written. Preservation would never make people do this kind of shit, and yet it is in this book, because Martha Wells is a shit writer. She is literally too lazy to simply reread this short of a fucking book that most people finish reading in 2 hours when they're not doing active reading and actively discussing the plot and the bigotry and the flaws in the writing like we are right now. People read this in 2 hours or less. There is no fucking excuse for Martha Wells not rereading her own goddamn first book in this series before writing the rest of the series to make sure it doesn't contradict it. Because this contradicts everything else in the series, which is why I am now forced to conclude that these motherfuckers are slave owners on purpose and are just lying about it, because that's literally the only conclusion you can come to after you read the rest of the series and then look at what they say in here as objectively false bullshit. We just didn't know robots were people, and we thought you were just a robot, so we didn't think enslaving you was wrong. That doesn't make any sense for what everything else in the series. And again, it doesn't make any fucking sense for why preservation would allow them to be here stranded, like literally stranded, without somebody on call up on a goddamn spaceship somewhere at all times. It's bad writing. If you literally cannot keep anything consistent from book 1 throughout the entire rest of the series, that's a sign you are a shit writer, and Martha Wells does this with all of her books. She can't even keep the concept demons are weak to water straight in Witch King. And she did this exact shit in the books of the Raxura. Let me get a drink. She establishes so many things in book 1 of the books of the Raxura and tries to convince us it's totally normal for these people's society, but then the entire rest of the series comes along and disproves everything we were shown in this, but it's not on purpose. She's not showing it was wrong on purpose to make us think it was actually wrong. It's just inconsistently bad writing that's not supposed to be contradictory, but it is. And that retroactively literally kills any liking you can have for the characters in the first book, because the entire rest of the series shows you this kind of shit they're getting up to is not even acceptable by the standards of everybody else in their species. If everybody else in their species were allowed to know the shit they are getting up to, everybody would be declaring war on them for fucking humanitarian reasons to overthrow this ruling class and rescue all of their fucking slaves. And this is a species that keeps an entirely separate species of slaves, and the Indigo Cloud Court, the thing our protagonists find in the first book, they are so horrible to their slaves that even the rest of the slave owners would be fucking horrified and losing their goddamn minds if they ever found out about it. That's what's going on here. Nothing in this book that we are just supposed to accept because it's book 1 and we're not given any context. None of it makes sense with the entire rest of the series. And the fact that these people are lying about not knowing that robots are people and thinking Murderbot was just a machine, as though they don't have robot people on their entire planet. That's just one of the many things that doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for why preservation would allow, especially their goddamn president, people as important as this. They wouldn't let a janitor do something like this shit, stranded on a planet in the corporation rim without a spaceship overhead at all times, or a special fucking Doctor Who intergalactic cell phone to call for help at any time. It doesn't make sense because it's badly written, because Martha Wells doesn't give a shit, and neither does her publisher. We're on page 90 now. I just want to see if that's at the 60% mark, because it's funny. Yep. We are now 60.40% of the way through this goddamn story. Anyways, Arata reached over and took Oversa's hand. She said, "If it isn't the company that's doing this, who is it? There has to be someone else here. Mensa rubbed her forehead, wincing as she thought. Those 2 extra sec units at Deltfall, which I still have my paper here. We're calling them Edith and Fran. Those 2 extra sec units at Deltfall came from somewhere. Sec unit, I'm assuming the company could be bribed to conceal the existence of a third survey team on this planet. And again, just referring to Murderbot as sec unit, aka slave, instead, because Murderbot said the name Murderbot is private. Nobody decided to follow that up by asking what else they should fucking call it, because they are still not treating it like a fucking person. If you ask somebody's name, and then somebody else tells you their fucking dead name, which doesn't make sense, but what the fuck ever. If somebody says, oh, yeah, their dead name is XYZ, and then you say, that's private, your follow-up question is, if you actually care about the person you're talking to, what would you prefer I call you instead? It's so simple, and yet these motherfuckers can't do it, and I'll tell you why. It's because Martha Wells wants to treat it as normal and awesome, the concept of just calling a slave, slave. Sec unit means slave. There is no such thing as a sec unit that's not a slave in this goddamn setting. They are referring to Murderbot as slave. It's not progressive. This is not treating Murderbot like a person. Again, they still have not asked it what its fucking pronouns are, so they are just continuing to dehumanize it by calling it an object, a thing they explicitly are doing when they call Murderbot by its pronouns, because that's what they've been doing from the start when they claim they didn't know it was a person, and yet nobody has asked, what pronouns should we call you? I feel like calling you an it is offensive, and then we could just have Murderbot say, no, those are my pronouns, I'll kill you if you call me anything else. But we can't do that. Again, I'm not going to go over it all over again. That would require Martha Wells to not hate trans people, a thing she's incapable of doing at this point. It's 2025. In February of 2025, she admitted she still doesn't know what non-binary means. Like the most basic definition, she doesn't know. She doesn't know what agender means. She doesn't care about queer people. Anyways, I said, the company could be bribed to conceal the existence of several hundred survey teams on this planet. Survey teams, whole cities, lost colonies, traveling circuses, as long as they thought they could get away with it. I just didn't see how they could get away with making a client survey team, 2 client survey teams, vanish. Because we're just making more jokes. Or why they'd want to. There were too many bond companies out there, too many competitors. Dead again. Stop trying to bring up the capitalist system that's supposed to be going on in here, because that doesn't make sense. But in a society where contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, safety isn't a primary concern. But safety is a primary concern for people from preservation, because they love OSHA. They do OSHA. They like OSHA. They want OSHA. Let me turn the fan on. So again, literally, the shit writing is so shit that we can't even keep basic concepts like people from preservation like safety and would pay more to get a security company that's not going to use the cheapest shit ever and endanger them, and wouldn't be using slave labor. So the only conclusion, again, we can possibly come to here is that actually they wanted to use slave labor, or they would have picked a company that doesn't use slave labor. They have the resources of an entire planet and beyond at their disposal. Why did I say exposal? They have the resources of literally the entire fucking planet to fund one stupid little survey with less than 10 people. They can afford to hire a company that doesn't use slave labor, but they fucking chose not to. And especially because fucking, what's it called? I swear these book titles are so useless. Fugitive Telemetry. The one with the lie on the cover where we made it seem like Murderbot was going to interact with a new robot character that we would get to know, and then they exist for like 5 pages maybe. Yeah, that established blatantly that nobody who's actually trying to help slaves trusts a single person on preservation. And it's like, yeah, I can see why. These motherfuckers literally went out of their way to pick a security company that uses slave labor as meat shields. So yeah, I can see why nobody wants to let a single person on preservation know that they do stuff to help slaves escape. It's like that's what you've written, Martha Wells. But we're just supposed to pretend that preservation is totally awesome and does totally think slavery is wrong, and it's like, no. Nope. No, that's not how that works. Dead clients were terrible for business. I don't actually believe that. It's a ridiculous statement. I don't think the company would collude with one set of clients to kill two other sets of clients. You purchased a bond agreement that the company would guarantee your safety or pay compensation in the event of your death or injury. Even if the company couldn't be held liable or partially liable for your deaths, they would still have to make a payment to your heirs. Deltfall was a large operation of 30 people. We're considering that a large operation, apparently. The death payout for them alone will be huge. And the company hated to spend money. You could tell that by looking at the recycled upholstery on the Habitat's furniture. And if everyone believes the clients were killed by faulty sec units, the payment would be even higher once all the lawsuits were filed. You can't just say this stuff and not explain to me why there's not a ring of people just going around faking their deaths to get all this money. That's the obvious question. And also, I don't believe any of this shit. We're just saying shit, and then we're never given anything to actually back any of this shit up, because the company, as far as this book is concerned, doesn't actually exist. It's never actually doing anything. It's not really an actual fucking threat. It's just kind of ephemeral. It's like a little, it's not really there. We're just saying things, and it's not actually true. On the cameras, I could see nods and thoughtful expressions as they took that in. And they remembered that I had experience in what happened after sec units malfunctioned and killed clients. So the company took a bribe to conceal this third survey group, but not to let them kill us, Overse said. Again, you'll notice we're all just still standing around talking about the plot instead of doing the plot. If you watched my Witch King videos and suffered through that with me, you'll notice that was like the entirety of Witch King. They were literally just sitting around on the goddamn boat, not accomplishing anything besides abusing children, harassing brown women, and like threatening violence upon brown women for no reason except because it's funny, apparently. So the company took a bribe to conceal this third survey group, but not to let them kill us, Overse said. One of the good things about scientist clients is that they're quick on the uptake. My slave owners are so smart and awesome and cool. That means we just need to stay alive long enough for the pickup transport to get here. But who is it? Arata waved her hands. The transcript also spells Arata's name wrong. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that different each time. For the record, it's spelled Arada. Anyways, but who is it? Arata waved her hands. We know whoever it is must have hacked control of the satellite. In the security camera, I saw her look towards me. Is that how they took control of the Deltfall sec units? Through a download? Still talking about this shit. And it's not actually interesting. It was a good question. I said, it's possible, but it doesn't explain why one of the 3 Deltfall units was killed outside the hub with a mining drill. We weren't that was Belladonna, the first non-Murderbot slave, Murderbot, proper noun, capital M, that we've met in this book. Met, I say, because they're already fucking murdered. And are framed as one of the good ones, because they're already fucking dead. We weren't supposed to be able to refuse a download, and I doubted there were other sec units hiding hacked governor modules. Because fuck you, Martha Wells. Because Martha Wells said, yeah, Murderbot is the only good slave who has ever hacked their fucking governor module. For some fucking reason, why would you assume that why would you doubt that there are any other sec units hiding hacked governor modules except for the part where Murderbot is a fucking serial killer and wants to murder every other slave? If the Deltfall group refused to download for their sec units because they were experiencing the same increase in equipment failure that we were, the two unidentified units could have been sent to manually infect the Deltfall units. Rathi was staring into the distance, and through the feed I saw he was reviewing my field camera video of the Deltfall habitat. He pointed in my direction, nodding. I agree, but it would mean the Deltfall group allowed the unknown units into their habitat. It was likely. We had checked to make sure all their hoppers were there, but it had been impossible to tell if an extra one had landed and taken off again at some point. You know, they never did search that vehicle shed where people could literally have been hiding if they had literally just gone in there before it fucking rained. So I guess whatever characters are hypothetically in there, they're just gonna die on this planet alone because nobody's gonna fucking look for them. Where was I? Speaking of which, I did a quick check of the security feed to see how our perimeter was doing. The drones were still patrolling, and our sensor alarms all responded to pings. It's really, really, really just too fucking convenient and making it too easy that Murderbot, despite being knocked violently unconscious from a suicide attempt, all of the drones that it had set before, they're just still doing their thing perfectly as ordered. No interruption to any of that because we can't have any actual stakes or threats to our characters. Overse said, but why? Why allow a strange group into their habitat? A group whose existence had been concealed from them. You'd do it, I said. I should have kept my mouth shut. Keep them thinking of me as their normal, obedient sec unit. Stop reminding them what I was. But I wanted them to be careful. Do I even have to explain the slavery apologism there? If a strange survey group landed here, all friendly, saying they had just arrived and, oh, we've had an equipment failure or our med system's down and we need help, you would let them in. Even if I told you not to, that it was against company safety protocol, you'd do it. Not that I'm bitter or anything. A lot of the company's rules are stupid or are just there to increase profit, but some of them are there for good reason. Not letting strangers into your habitat is one of them. Because everybody that you don't personally know is a threat to you. Totally normal, progressive statement to make. Arada and Rathi exchanged a wry look. Overse conceded, we might, yes. Mensa had been quiet, listening to us. She said, I think it was easier than that. I think they said they were us, and that's supposed to be really dramatic. It was so simple, I turned around and looked directly at her. Her brow was furrowed in thought. She said, so they land, say they're us, that they need help. That's the end of the sentence. Oh my god. So they land, comma, say they're us, comma, that they need help. Period. If they have access to our hub system, listening to our comm would be easy. I said, when they came here, and we're still standing around talking about this shit, we could be doing stuff. They're literally just standing around a room. And it's not even for Murderbot's benefit so we can actively rest from almost dying because of a suicide attempt. Instead, we're just standing around the room not doing anything because Martha Wells can't think of anything else that they could be doing right now that's fucking relevant. Especially because they have futuristic walkie-talkies in their fucking heads. There's nothing to stop them from all running around doing shit while they're having this conversation. I said, when they come here, they won't do that. It all depended on what this other survey group had, whether they had come prepared to get rid of rival survey teams or had decided on it after they got here. They could have armed air units, combat sec units, armed drones. I pulled a few examples from the database and sent them into the feed for the humans to see. Medsystems feed informed me that Rathi, Overse, and Arada's heart rates had just accelerated. Mensa's hadn't, because she had already thought of all of this. It was why she had sent Pinley and Girthin to shut off hub system. And also, I'm going to point out, we're on page 93. Let's see where every time I stop to check the page number or something, we're just going to see what percentage we're at now. 62%. I have not watched the fucking show, and I don't plan to, unless it randomly shows up in the fucking slightly off topic, but we started watching Stargate because Stargate Atlantis Season 1 showed up for $3 in the bargain bin at Dollar General like 2 decades ago at this point. So that's the only way we will ever watch this fucking TV show, when it's in the bargain bin at Dollar General in 20 years or so. What was I saying? Oh, I haven't watched the fucking show, but I've seen people discussing it online, and I know one thing that they've changed is that Dr. Mensah has a panic attack in the first episode, and it's not, I hope it's not treated as funny. Nobody seems to be saying that it's treated as a joke to mock people who have anxiety, but people are mad about that because she's so strong, she doesn't need any help in the book, because they are ableist and don't grasp that what Martha Wells is doing in here is the fucking trope where all the other characters are allowed to ask for help, but the black woman has to be able to handle all of her own emotions herself and is never weak in quotation marks, never needs anybody else's help or anything like that. So again, a harmful fucking trope that's saying that black women are always the most competent emotionally, they don't need anybody else's help. You are meant to lean on them for emotional comfort, but they don't get to lean on anyone. It's a continuation of the fucking mammy trope, and by specifying all throughout this thing that Mensah is the one who is staying calm and collected and has complete control over everything, and especially here, just something as simple as her heart rate not increasing, even without an outward show of fear at the idea that people are going to come and murder them. That's just playing into that trope. So, like, yeah, it's fine actually for the TV show to show Mensah having a panic attack, because in the fucking graboid thing, her heart rate had increased and was pounding while they were flying back, because she does in fact have emotions and does in fact feel fear, and that's not something that she should be ashamed of. And the TV show is doing, I think season 2 got announced, presuming they're going to follow the general trajectory of the books, which they might not. That's set up for Mensah later having PTSD that the books don't really actually give a shit about. Anyways, whatever. Nervously, Rathi said, "What do we do when they come here?" I said, "Be somewhere else." Line break. Also, I'm not sure why that's not just a new chapter. That would have been a good spot to end the chapter. When did chapter 5 start? Skip. No, it's too far. It's chapter 4. Can we go? Alright, I can't find chapter 5. Let's see if this book has a table of contents. Because Witch King didn't. Yeah, this doesn't. Of course not. Why are we not doing table of contents anymore? What is this shit? Are books these days being optimized for e-reader instead of print so that they think, oh yeah, you don't need a table of contents? Why do you need to know what page chapter 5 starts on? Like, I'm gonna, now out of spite for the lack of table of contents, I'm flipping back to the start of chapter 5 until I find it. And then I'll tell you. Okay, chapter 5 started on page 77. We're on page 94. So if we'd ended that chapter there, which I think we should because it's just a natural place to stop. Anyways, there's a line break instead of a chapter break. It may seem weird that Mensah was the only human to think of abandoning the habitat while we waited for the beacon to bring help, but as I said before, This sounds like somebody pointed out this shit out to Martha Wells as not making sense and a blatant fucking plot hole when we're supposed to see these characters as competent and knowledgeable and having basic logic. This is reading exactly like somebody's told her it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they immediately shut down the computer system that they know is trying to kill them and immediately just leave if it's very obvious that people are coming to kill them? So it sounds like she just put this in here to brush that aside and pretend it's actually very reasonable for them to not turn off the computer system that they don't see as a person that they think is trying to kill them. That doesn't make sense. That's very... It's not on the level of caricaturizing somebody, but, like, this is, like, breaking the fourth wall. It may seem weird. This is on page 94. It may seem weird that Mensa was the only human to think of abandoning the habitat while we waited for the beacon to bring help. But as I said before, these weren't intrepid galactic explorers. They were people who had been doing a job and suddenly found themselves in a terrible situation. Okay, that's not excusing the plot holes. That's just, that honestly feels like a fourth wall break to tell me to stop complaining that the characters' actions make no sense with everything that we're supposed to believe about them. Yep, we're just defending the plot holes right now and the lack of characterization actually affecting the plot. It's just that's what we're doing on this page, I guess. And it had been hammered into them from the pre-trip orientation to the waivers they had to sign for the company to the survey packages with all the hazard information to their on-site briefing by their sec unit that this was an unknown, potentially dangerous region on a mostly unsurveyed planet. They weren't supposed to leave the habitat without security precautions, and we didn't even do overnight assessment trips. The idea that they might have to stuff both hoppers full of emergency supplies and run for it, and that would be safer than their habitat, was hard to grasp. It's not that hard to grasp. You've only seen one thing that was even remotely dangerous, and that was a graboid at the bottom of a very obvious crater that, for anybody actually paying attention... Oh, I think Arata's supposed to be a biologist. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like Arata's supposed to be a biologist. Or maybe it's Overse that's a biologist, and then she's on the side a field medic. Any biologist would look at all of these craters spread around this island and think, yeah, there's probably animals living down there. Pit-trapping antlions. Look up pit-trapping antlions. It was hilarious when the characters in Bleach shouted, "Pit-trapping antlion!" after I found some pit-trapping antlions. Look that up. Pit-trapping antlion. They're not ants. They're things that eat ants. Like lions, I guess. Yeah, the first two paragraphs on this page just seem to be an edited in and very ham-fisted attempt to just justify the fact that none of the characters are just doing things that make sense. Like, oh, the idea that leaving here could be safer it's hard to grasp. Not at all. Somebody's asking me a question about actual grasses. So, hold on, let me pause this. Okay, I'm back. Somebody asking me a question about sedges, which I think are a type of grass, but they might not even actually be a grass. I know they're a monocot. I don't know. They're interesting looking, but I don't know anything about them, unfortunately. Yeah, the ham-fisted, stop questioning what the plot demands and just go along with it even though it doesn't make sense for the characters. The idea that they might have to stuff both hoppers full of emergency supplies and run for it, and that would be safer than their habitat, was hard to grasp. Except again, they are from preservation. They don't take everything that the evil capitalist corporation says at face value. The only thing they've found that was even remotely dangerous was a graboid at the bottom of a very obvious crater that may as well have giant glowing neon signs on it that says, "Don't go down here, there's animals living down here." Like, at the very least, if you go to a place that's very obviously got craters that are very obviously maintained in some way because they're not filled in with grass like it's an ancient impact or something, at the very least, you're going to think, okay, something is clearly going on here at a regular interval enough to keep this crater not covered in grass. So maybe let's not go there. Maybe it's a land, maybe there's some weird alien fantasy land whirlpool going on. And this time it happened to be graboids, but you don't fucking know. It could be anything. So why did they go down there? It genuinely doesn't make sense for any of these fucking characters. When you actually get established with what they're supposed to be like in the whole rest of the series, none of their actions make sense. So now we have 2 paragraphs on page 94 just trying to beat us over the head with stop questioning the fact that the plot is completely overshadowing anything that makes sense for the characters as they are established. I'll reread you these 2 paragraphs on this page because it's funny. It's very clearly like Martha Wells breaking the fourth wall because somebody in the editing process said it really does. Somebody had to have told her. It really doesn't make sense that they haven't just left or turned off the computers that are trying to kill them. So on page 94, after a random page break that should have just been the end of the chapter, it would have been a natural place to end the chapter. We get this after that page break. It may seem weird that Mensa was the only human to think of abandoning the habitat while we waited for the beacon to bring help, but as I said before, these weren't intrepid galactic explorers. They were people who had been doing a job and suddenly found themselves in a terrible situation. And it had been hammered into them from the pre-orientation trip to the waivers they had to sign for the company, to the survey packages with all the hazard information, to their on-site briefing by their sec unit that this was an unknown, potentially dangerous region on a mostly unsurveyed planet. They weren't supposed to leave the habitat without security precautions, and we didn't even do overnight assessment trips. The idea that they might have to stuff both hoppers full of emergency supplies and run for it, and that this would be safer than their habitat, was hard to grasp. Does that not sound exactly like breaking...
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Also, by the on-site briefing by their sec unit, instead of Murderbot saying, by me, that's really weird. Like, I started reading that, I was like, no, wait, are we breaking the fourth wall right now? What's the dude who's doing the Jurassic Park review?
Crimson Rogue?
Yeah, Crimson Rogue, some dude on YouTube who does book reviews named Crimson Rogue. He has one very racist comment on a video from several years ago, so I'm hoping he fucking listened to a single person in the comments that wasn't doing the exact same thing. But he's constantly talking about shit like, you know, how the plot shouldn't overshadow the characters. Characters shouldn't be doing things just because it's what the plot demands when it doesn't make sense for the characters, because this literally just seems like multiple people must have been pointing out to Martha Wells that this doesn't make sense. Why haven't they just left? And then the answer is because that's not what's supposed to be happening in the plot yet. So then this bullshit got written to, like, break the fourth wall.
And she's not subtle when she does this.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
When she's caricaturizing her critics.
Mm-hmm. But when Pin Lee and Gurathan shut down Hub System and Valescu unpacked the satellite download that was meant for me, they grasped it pretty quick. Bharadwaj outlined it for us on the comm while I was getting my extra suit skin and my armor back on. And you notice we still don't know what the fuck a suit skin is, and it will never come up after this book ever again. It would take 5 seconds to clarify. Is it an actual extra layer of skin? Or is it just wearing underclothes? Underclothes. One word. Extra layer of skin. extra layer of skin. That's 4 words. That's all you gotta do. Either give us 4 words or 1 fucking word. Just define what the absolute fuck a suit skin is. Because we keep getting told that's a thing. It exists. There's injuries and stuff involving it. Is it clothes or is it fake skin? The most basic shit in the world. And we never get an answer. And it makes it impossible, along with all the other lack of descriptions, to actually imagine anything that's going on here when it actually fucking matters. Bharadwaj outlined it for us on the comm while I was getting my extra suit skin and my armor back on. It was meant to take control of Sec Unit. It was meant to take control of Slave with a capital fucking S, because they're still dehumanizing Murderbot and literally treating it like a fucking object. The actual fucking response to, hey, don't call me by that name, that is private. The follow-up question is, what would you prefer we call you instead? Murderbot has never told a single one of these motherfuckers to call it Sec Unit. They're just doing that. The exact same thing they were doing before they supposedly started treating it like a person, which is what they're supposedly doing now, despite not asking what its pronouns are and not asking what it actually wants to be called. Also, Martha Wells is ridiculous and racist and bad at writing. It was meant to take control of Slave, and once the instructions were very specific. She finished. Why are you saying she finished? She's still talking. Okay. Dialogue start. It was meant to take control of Slave, and the instructions were very specific. End that dialogue. She finished. Period. Then she continues talking. Once Slave was under control, it would give them access to med system and sex system. Why are we saying she finished? Like, she's not finished talking yet. She's still talking. She added comma, blah would work, but you can't say she finished and then she's literally still talking in the same fucking paragraph. I got my helmet on and opaqued it. The relief was intense, about even with finding out that the combat override module had been removed. More jokes. I love you, armor, and I'm never leaving you again. And then Murderbot is literally never given armor ever again in the entire fucking series, and the only reason it continues to be drawn with this fucking armor on the covers. I'll even go get system collapse. Feel free to say anything you want while I'm getting that fucking 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So disgusting. Who the fuck did this? And they made it even skinnier on this. They're like going out of their way to make it as skinny looking as possible. Because she also hates fat people. The only reason Murderbot continues to be drawn in this armor in the books is the racism. Let me put this back.
And you just go get it?
What?
I said, didn't you just go to get that?
Yeah, I was just literally just showing it to show that was system collapse chronologically. As far as the main normal numbering system is concerned, that's supposedly book 7. I'm not counting it as book 7. Yeah, the only reason Murderbot continues to be drawn with this armor, despite it literally never having access to it ever again in the entire fucking series, is that it is plausible deniability. Martha Wells gets to tell everybody that Murderbot is a dark-skinned person of color, but then in the English covers at least, it's always drawn with this armor on, which means all of the racist fans get to whitewash it and project the Aryan fucking stereotype, the Aryan ideal onto it, and they're not technically wrong because look, we never see what Murderbot looks like. We never get an actual description of it in the books. We just have Martha Wells in multiple interviews telling people it's a dark-skinned person of color, and that is so that she gets plausible deniability and free brownie points for saying, oh yeah, my protagonist totally not white, totally a person of color, guys. But then always never actually showing that, never actually describing it that way, so that she gets the points for saying this without ever actually having to do anything that could possibly drive away racist fans. And now, I'm gonna keep saying it, now she gets that plausible deniability, she gets to cash that check in by shilling for Apple, who is whitewashing the dark-skinned protagonist that she's been telling people for 8 years is a dark-skinned person of color. But now it gets whitewashed as the literal fucking Aryan ideal. And she gets to just not say anything about the fact that she told everyone it was a person of color with dark skin before now, because, well, she never actually put that on the book covers. She never actually put that in the books themselves, so it's not actually whitewashing. She's not cheering for whitewashing. She's just literally profiting off of white supremacy in its most basic and blatant form. And not even just white supremacy, white patriarchy, because it's a literal cis white man. It's not even a white non-binary person, it's a white cis man. But yeah, that's why Murderbot is always in the armor on the covers, despite it literally never having access to armor ever again throughout the entire rest of the fucking series. Ever again. It's all to fuel the fucking racism and give her plausible deniability, where she gets to claim that Murderbot's a person of color, so you should celebrate her book and support it by giving her your money, but also she gets to shill for Apple and gleefully cheer on and scream from the rooftops how happy she is that she gets to profit off of white supremacy because her protagonist is being whitewashed. Anyways, Mensa clicked onto the comm. Pinley, what about the beacon? I got a go signal when I initiated launch, Pinley. Pinley sounded even more exasperated than usual, but with hub system shut down, I can't get any confirmation. I told them over the feed that I could dispatch a drone to check on it. A good beacon launch was pretty important right now. And you'll notice we never actually have gotten a description of what the beacon is yet. It's just a thing, and we're never actually going to get any information upon what exactly it entails until until after that's relevant to the plot, like every other fucking thing, because it's badly written. And Martha Wells is under the impression that keeping information from the reader on purpose is somehow clever, and it's just bad fucking writing. Mensa gave me the go-ahead, and I forwarded the order to one of my drones. Our beacon, we're doing this again. Our beacon was a few kilos away, as in kilometers, not kilograms, kilometers. The few times in this book that doing the correct thing would have increased the length, a thing they're desperate to do, and then they still don't do the correct thing. It's like, just put in kilometers. That would have given you that many extra letters with which to pad your fucking runtime. The thing you're so desperate to do, you are inserting entire full blank pages. But no, you want to do this instead, just to be annoying. Our beacon was a few kilos. Also, as my twin has pointed out, click. Just call it a fucking click. That's military slang. A thing it would make sense for Murderbot to use. Just say, our beacon was a few clicks away. That's so simple. And is not obnoxious, like using kilo to mean kilometer is, without first establishing we're talking about kilometers. Our
Especially
beacon...
This click is already military slang.
Yeah, I just said that. I literally just said that. Our beacon was a few kilometers, clicks, away from our habitat site for safety, but I thought we should have been able to hear it launch. Maybe not. I had never had to launch one before. Mensa had already got the humans organized and moving, and as soon as I had my weapons and spare drones loaded, I grabbed a couple of crates. I kept catching little fragments of conversation over the security cameras. You have to think of it as a person, Pinley said to Garathan, because we're further pretending that these motherfuckers didn't know it was a person the whole entire time, because they literally come from a planet that is probably half the population is robots who are considered people. This is bullshit. This is more slavery apologism trying to convince us, the readers, that they just had no clue it was a person, even though the entire rest of the series goes on to blow that out of the fucking water completely and utterly. It is a person, Arada insisted, because, you know, we just love lying to the audience, because they are lying to the audience right now, and they're lying to Murderbot, more importantly, because they didn't have to be lying here. We could have shown them coming from an actual backwater planet where it's just like 20 fucking I don't fucking know, an actual backwater planet where they have absolute, like, zero technology, and they don't even know what they're doing, and they've never seen robots in their fucking lives. But we don't do that, because that would require actually for them to be poor people who are not rich, disgustingly rich academics, which is what they are. And Martha Wells also hates poor people on top of all of the other minorities she hates. She hates poor people. So we don't actually get a preservation where anything these characters are fucking lying about is actually a fucking thing it's possible for them to have thought. They could have genuinely not known that Murderbot was a person if they were poor. If they were from an actual backwater Roro planet where nothing happens and they have no contact or no news channels with any of this shit, and they just genuinely don't know. But that's not what the entire rest of the series is, because Martha Wells hates poor people, so of course these people have to be actually rich and powerful and literally have a society run on slave labor from robots that they admit are people. But we're just supposed to pretend that they're not that the robots are not enslaved because they call it guardianship instead of owner. It's all the racism. Rathi and Arada sprinted past me, carrying medical supplies and spare power cells. You know how I just pointed out that they were all just standing around discussing this shit when they could have been doing something? They could have been doing this shit right now. They could have just started packing the hoppers while they were doing all this. Or, you know, better yet, they could have all packed the fucking hoppers before Murderbot even woke up. Because, again, it was at least a day to get back from the Deltfall habitat across the entire goddamn ocean to the other side of the fucking planet. And then at least several fucking hours, if not a whole another day, of Murderbot being unconscious in order for Girthin, Valescu, and Pin Lee to be doing all that shit. But we never acknowledge that time gap. So the story literally just stops and starts when Murderbot is awake because it's badly written. I had extended our drone perimeter as far as it could go. We didn't know that whoever hit Deltfall would show up at any second, but it was a strong possibility. So why were you all wasting literally at least several hours, if not an entire day, while Murderbot was unconscious getting this shit done? Girthin,
If this is while they're
talk louder,
if
just
this
for
is
the
while
fan.
they're hacking into Murderbot's brain, that means they're also going past all whatever proprietary firewalls and shit block that kind of thing from happening.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. They just pointed out, if they are literally hacking into Murderbot's brain to the point that they've downloaded and reviewed its whole entire personal fucking log, as long as all of the shit with its governor module, that means that they just fucking hacked through all of the proprietary firewalls that the company would have had in place. So, yeah, we're supposed to believe that they're capable of doing all of that. But then they also just don't do anything to actually improve the situation at all.
Magical hacking. There when the plot requires it.
Huh?
Magical hacking. There when the plot requires it. No other time.
Yep. Girthin had come out to check the big hopper and the little hopper systems. Have I mentioned lately how much I hate the fact that there are two hoppers? It's just needlessly overcomplicated for literally no reason. Just make it one fucking helicopter. They don't need to be two of them. It's obnoxious. It's just unnecessary. Just get rid of the small one. Just say, we have a goddamn ship. It's a ship. It's a planet ship. Call it something. It's ridiculous. Especially, it doesn't make any sense. Why would the big hopper not be big enough for all of them to fit in it? It doesn't fucking make sense. It doesn't fucking make sense. It's literally just there to be fucking redundant and overcomplicate things completely fucking needlessly. Garrethan had come out to check the big hopper and the little hopper systems. Also, we still don't know what the fuck they look like in any capacity. These things could be bright neon yellow, and we don't fucking know. They could be mini Millennium Falcons. We don't fucking know. They could be shaped like giant robot dogs. We don't know. Maybe because they're called hoppers, they're shaped like giant fucking kangaroos. None of these options are off the fucking table because there is zero description of them in any fucking way whatsoever. We don't even know what color they are.
They could be shaped like flying grasshoppers from Bug's Life.
Yeah. Like, this is bad writing. And people are like, oh, well, it's just because Murderbot wouldn't care. It's in all of her things. It's in all of her stories. It's even in Murderbot stories that are not from Murderbot's perspective. So shut the fuck up and stop trying to defend bad writing with in-universe justifications that don't even make sense and don't fucking apply, because it's a literal consistent problem throughout all of the author's writing, not just this shit. Garrethan had come out to check the big hopper and the little hopper system to make sure no one other than us had access, and that Hub System hadn't messed with their code. I kept an eye on him through one of the drones. He kept looking at me, or trying not to look at me, which was worse. I didn't need the distraction right now. When the next attack came, it was going to be fast. I do think of it as a person, Garrethan said, an angry, heavily armed person who has no reason to trust us. So Garrethan is the one now doing the slavery apologism of demonizing slaves by saying that slaves are all just violent, evil murder machines. But it's bad when he does it, but totally fine when Murderbot and the author herself do it, because Martha Wells is racist and has no sense of irony. It's a freaking fruit fly. Like, literally, an angry, heavily armed person who has no reason to trust us. Murderbot literally goes around murdering other slaves with this exact justification, but it's only presented as a bad thing because Garrethan is being mean to Murderbot in particular, the only slave that matters as far as this fucking series is concerned. Then stop being mean to it, Raffi told him. That might help. Again, we literally just affirmed in the fucking text that Garrethan is being mean. Mean.
Because this is marketed for adults.
And this is an adult book. This is a book marketed towards adults. This isn't young adult. This isn't middle grade. This is for adults. It's meant to be a serious story for fucking adults. They know their sec unit successfully gave our sec unit the combat module, Mensa was saying over the comm, and we have to assume they received enough information from Hub System to know we removed it. What? But they don't know that we've theorized that. Why are we talking about this shit? Just shut up. Stop talking.
The same 3 conversations again?
Yes, we are just saying this again. They know their sec unit successfully gave our sec unit the combat module, Mensa was saying over the comm, and we have to assume they received enough information from Hub System to know we removed it. But they don't know that we've theorized their existence. When slave cut off the Hub System's access, we were still assuming this was sabotage from the company. They won't realize we know they're coming, and it's like, nobody gives a shit. Just get the fuck on with the goddamn plot. There is no point in saying all of this again. Which is why we had to keep moving. Raffi and Arata stopped to answer a question about the medical equipment power cells, and I shooed them back to the habitat for the next load. Notice the phrasing there? Shooing them like they're little children? Like the fucking mammy trope that I just fucking said Murderbot is also an example of the mammy trope. I'll link a fucking video in the description for this. For a video that is, like, literally required fucking viewing if you are going to talk about the Murderbot Diaries or just in general. I'm gonna make everybody watch it. You have to fucking watch it. Yeah, Murderbot is literally the mammy trope. Especially because in Network Effect, one of its slave owners, explicitly, literally in the books, one of its slave owners refers to it as Mom. It's fucking ridiculous. The problem I was going to have is that the way Murderbots fight is we throw ourselves at the target and try to kill the shit out of it, knowing that 90% of our bodies can be regrown or replaced in a cubicle, so finesse is not required. And yet, somehow we're just supposed to accept the fact that Murderbot has won every fight it's gotten into, except for when it got snuck up on. And also, yeah, 90% of our bodies can be regrown or replaced in a cubicle because we hate disabled people in a Martha Wells universe.
And steaks.
And steaks. We hate disabled people and steaks. You'll notice that Murderbot has been catastrophically injured twice now. First with the graboid, then with the fucking getting attacked by the enslaved other slaves, and then attempting to kill itself. And all of those injuries, they're magically gone. In between each fucking incident, the injuries are magically gone. Murderbot doesn't have to continue dealing with a weak arm or anything from whatever the fuck happened in the graboid fight. We still don't fucking even know which limbs were affected besides something in its abdomen in some undescribed way. It dislocated its fucking arm, its shoulder in the Deltfall fight, and got shot in the hip 3 times. I have my little stick figure here. No, correction. Got shot in the hip 4 times, got shot in the shoulder 3 times, then dislocated that shoulder, then apparently lost its whole entire hand from getting shot in the hand. Also, got completely violently knocked unconscious the first time, and then got shot in the chest to the point that it instantly almost fucking died right then and there. And that's all gone.
Surgery.
And experimental brain surgery from these people. Literally going into Murderbot's brain and hacking into its fucking brain, the mechanical parts of its brain, and fucking with its brain as people who are not qualified to do this shit. All of that has happened, and it's all magically healed because it's literally just exists to cause drama for the about 2 fucking pages where it lasts, and then it gets instantly healed because Martha Wells hates physically disabled people and doesn't actually want the characters to actually have to struggle. Imagine if the injuries from that first attack by a graboid were still persistent when Murderbot went into the Deltfall habitat, and that it then has to deal with all of that shit, barely able to move while all this is going on. That would require actually caring about physically disabled people and just basic storytelling of if there have to be consequences to your character's actions, and those consequences have to fucking matter. Otherwise, your audience is going to get sick of your shit and leave, which is what is happening with this series. I literally did the fucking calculations a few weeks ago. For everybody that read this book, only 19% of the people who read this book bothered to read System Collapse. 19%. That's all that's left of the audience initiated by this fucking book. Only 19% of that audience gives enough fucks left to read System Collapse, the book that's supposedly number 7.
And it's so bad, most people have given up.
And System Collapse was so fucking terrible and continuing to go nowhere that is most people who were leaving reviews said that was the moment that the series jumped the shark and they will not be reading the next one. So I can't wait until fucking Platform Decay comes out so I can run the numbers on that and see what the audience retention's at after. Like, it's ridiculous because there's only so long you can string your fucking audience along with a story that clearly does not give a single fuck about anything at all. When we left the habitat, I wouldn't have access to the cubicle. Even if we knew how to take it apart, which we didn't, it was too big to fit in the hopper and required too much power. And you might be thinking, wow, so we're finally getting an actual stakes? So Murderbot's injuries will actually mean something? No. Don't hold your fucking breath. It doesn't have access to a company cubicle for the entire rest of the series after this book, and yet it still continues to get magically healed every single time, because despite supposedly being made up of proprietary technology, you can drop it off in any random doctor's office and they will fix it instantaneously. Perfectly. Zero trouble at all. The proprietary technology doesn't actually exist. And not in the way of Murderbot was lied to and told that it can't get healed any other way. No, it just doesn't exist because it's shit writing and it doesn't actually impact anything, even though we keep getting told that we're so expensive to repair. But you can drop it off at any doctor's office. Literally any medical bay can repair Murderbot. Zero actual fucking intensive things required, even though it's supposedly got cyborg arms and legs. It's badly fucking written, and it just gets worse the longer it goes on. That's why only 19% of the audience remains for System Collapse, and now after System Collapse, I think we should run a vote. What number? We're gonna have to wait like 2 fucking years to check the ratings for Platform Decay so that it has time to catch up to all of the other numbers. What number of audience retention do we think will be remaining to rate Platform Decay when it comes out? I'm gonna vote right now.
I say 15 or 10%.
Okay, they said 10 to 15%. I'm gonna go with 10% audience retention, if not 8%. Those are my votes. You can feel free to also vote. This is going to be on the Internet Archive. You can leave a review just predicting what vote. We will literally have to wait until like 2028 to compare the numbers for Platform Decay to all of the other ones, because I ran the numbers just last month. So all of the books are at least 2 years old, so we're going to have to wait until Platform Decay is at least 2 years old to give it a fighting chance. Anyways, yeah. Where the fuck was I? Yeah. I'm voting 10%. I'm voting 8 to 10% audience remaining at all. And they're voting 10 to 15. Feel free to fucking vote.
Please put a number down in the comments.
No, we're not doing that shit. You don't have to comment on YouTube. Fuck YouTube. I don't give a shit. You can do it on the Internet Archive because that doesn't have an algorithm. So, yep. Where is it? Oh, yeah. When we left the habitat, I wouldn't have access to the cubicle. A lie! Even if we knew how to take it apart, which we didn't, it was too big to fit in the hopper and required too much power. That's just a lie. Murderbot will have access to the cubicle. It's literally never going to actually have to do... I should check what my battery's at. Okay, it's at 67%. The screen just darkened noticeably. Guess it was just doing that for fun. Murderbot is never, ever, ever going to have a single instance in this entire series where it's actually injured for probably more than 10 pages at a time, and every single time it instantly gets magically healed off screen like it never fucking happened. Every single goddamn time. Every single time. Which is again conflicting with the Murderbots are so expensive and so hard to repair and made with proprietary technology that nobody else knows how to work with. But no, because Martha Wells wants the trappings of anti-capitalist dystopias, but she doesn't actually want to follow through on what that fucking requires. Because she hates physically disabled people, she hates poor people, she's actually fully fine with capitalism. She's literally right now profiting off of white supremacy gleefully. Anyways. Blah, 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 blah. We can't take the thingy-majiggy with us, so everybody pretend that Murderbot's in actual real danger, even though it's already gotten extremely injured twice now and completely magically healed in between each fight. And they might have actual combat bots rather than security bots like me. So much more lying going on. It's just bullshit. It's just bullshit and so much redundancy. It's ridiculous. In which case, our only chance was going to be keeping away from them until the pickup transport arrived. Why are we saying this again? Why are we saying this again? Why are we saying this again? In which case, our only chance was going to be keeping away from them until the pickup transport arrived. Like, didn't we literally just say that exact fucking phrase a few pages ago?
Back to back.
I have to find it. Oh wait, instead of scrolling through this, I can just open the stupidly named EPUB from the fucking Humble Bundle thing. First, let's see what percentage we're at now, thanks to my calculator. We're now 64% of the way through this fucking pile of garbage. Pile of garbage that can't keep anything straight. I guess I don't need to actually open Calibre. I can just do this. If you get the Humble Bundle thing, rename all the files. The file names they give you are absolute useless fucking garbage. I actually am going to read off what I recommend renaming them to right now, because they're that garbage. Okay, the files that you will get from the Humble Bundle. Can I click, please? Okay, in alphabetical order, assuming your computer is sorted to show files by alphabetical order. Okay, yes, this is a pause the regular video. I'll just make this also a separate one, but you're dealing with it. It's going on here for posterity. All systems read _ ebook. That's should be the first one that shows up. Rename that Murderbot 01 all systems read. And then you can include by Martha Wells 2017 if you want. But mostly importantly, just put Murderbot 01 all systems read so that it appears in fucking chronological order. Alright? Next one is artificial condition _ EPUB. Name that Murderbot 02 artificial condition by Martha Wells 2018 if you're like me and want to include the dates. Next is City of Bones. You notice that they're not even keeping any of these things consistent. They're not even calling them all _ ebook. Anyways, rename City of Bones to City of Bones by Martha Wells 1995. Next is Exit Strategy _ ebook. Rename that Murderbot 04 Exit Strategy by Martha Wells 2018. Next is Fugitive Telemetry _ ebook. Rename that to Murderbot 09 Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells 2021. Next is Home _ Habitat Range Niche Territory is all one fucking word. Rename that Murderbot 08. I guess I have to say this stupid ass name out loud. Home Habitat Range Niche Territory by Martha Wells 2021. Next is Network Effect. Are you picking up on the thing yet? Name that Murderbot 07 Network Effect by Martha Wells 2020. Next is Rapport, Friendship, Solidarity, Communion, Empathy is all one word, crushed together like somebody is saying it really fucking fast. Name that Murderbot 12 Rapport, Friendship, Solidarity, Communion, Empathy by Martha Wells 2025. Next is Rogue Protocol _ ebook. Name that Murderbot 03 Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells 2018. Next is Just System Collapse. There's no _ ebook because they are not even consistent with the fucking file names for an official fucking thing. Name that Murderbot 10 System Collapse by Martha Wells 2023. Then we have The Book of Illyrian, which I think somebody needs to be fired for. That is a fucking lie. That's a fucking lie. Rename The Book of Illyrian into The Element of Fire and The Death of the Necromancer by Martha Wells 1993 and 1998. Because calling it The Book of Illyrian implies that's a compilation of every single book set in the Illyrian thing, and it's not. That's 2 books. There are at least 3 others, plus a whole collection of short stories that's not included in the Book of Illyrian. That's a fucking lie. Like, that is a blatant fucking lie, and there's no reason for it. Next one, we're almost done. Another lie. Well, no, this one is true, because it's just a lie in spirit. The Emily Adventures. Calling it adventures is going too far. Rename that to Emily and the Hollow World and Emily and the Sky World by Martha Wells, 2013 and 2014. Then we have Wheel of the Infinite. Rename that to Wheel of the Infinite by Martha Wells, 2000. And then it's just Witch King, which is another lie. It's just blatant fucking false advertising, lying, stringing along the audience, DLC culture in book form. Rename that The Rising World 01 Witch King by Martha Wells, 2023. Because that was marketed and sold as and promised to people to be a standalone novel. A fully standalone novel is what that was. Everybody was told that was, aka that was sold as a complete story. And now there's a sequel coming out because it ended without any actual conclusion. And now people on Goodreads who have gotten the advanced reader copies are saying that it's leading into a threequel. It's leading into a 3rd fucking book. So it's literally lying and scamming the fucking audience, convincing people to pay almost $30 for a thing they're promised is a complete standalone novel, a whole self-contained story that is accomplished and complete from start to finish without anything missing, only to reveal, like, almost immediately, actually, there's a sequel coming out. We fucking lied to you about it being standalone. And now the people who are getting to read that sequel early before it's actually published are telling everyone, yeah, now this is leading into a 3rd book. So the thing we were promised was a standalone is at this fucking point going to be 3 goddamn books, if not more. So they are literally just fucking lying to everybody to convince you to shell out $30 for what is the first book in a series that has no conclusion and is shittily written from start to finish and doesn't make any sense and is literally just, it's ridiculous. Why was I even trying to open up the EPUB? Did you remember what I wanted to open this for? To look for something? I don't remember. Let's see what was on the page before I got distracted. Anyways, we're continuing. There's an image for people to search through the thingies for. Oh, for looking for the sentence, keeping away from them until the pickup transport arrives. So let's do Control F. Yeah, Overse just said a few pages ago, this means we need to stay alive long enough for the transport to get here. Okay, and then next is Murderbot saying this. We need to stay alive until the pickup transport arrived. Let me just search pickup. Because it's giving me 4 results. And it's like, Murderbot is literally just repeating the exact shit in the conversation they all just stood around having while not doing anything. And we're just saying it again for no other purpose except to make this story seem longer than it actually is, without anything actually fucking happening. Like, you would think from how much summarizing is suddenly going on that this was the start of a 2nd book, that the first one had just ended, or as though we've been off the air, a TV show that's been off the air for 5 years, so we're like, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of a recap, just so you're on the same fucking page. Like, what is going on here? Why are we just repeating all of the things we literally just established? Okay. And they might have actual combat bots of things that don't actually matter in any fucking way, rather than security bots like me. In which case, and again, you notice Murderbot referring to itself as a bot, meaning a mechanical robot in this setting, and then the whole rest of the series wants to claim that it's actually not a bot, even though it literally referred to itself as one in this book multiple times. And now, in the newest things, Martha Wells is seemingly just drifting away from calling any person in here a bot and is just calling them MIs, or machine intelligences, for some fucking reason, even though it's completely breaking the terminology, the useless terminology that causes more problems than it solves. But you at least need to be fucking consistent about it, and she's just seeming to be just going, oh, I'll just call them MIs now, without ever actually explaining to anybody what that means, so that there's genuinely tons of people who are, from just reading Rapport alone, where this shit gets mentioned, they're assuming, oh, that means military something. Military intelligences? Is that what it means? Because she's using a fucking acronym that she hasn't properly spelled out yet. Because she wants to seem clever and is trying to say something about generative AI without actually saying a single thing.
Would you like to know something very funny about Murderbot's
Yes, because I have to
flenderization?
get a drink, so just talk louder so they hear.
Something very funny about Murderbot's flenderization that it's so much easier to count now with the Humble Bundle ebooks and using the search function on the Kindle. A lot of the reviews and a lot of the bad reviews for the later Murderbot books make a lot of commentary about we're suddenly getting F-bombs dropped left, right, and center.
Yep.
What, like, just out of nowhere, they just suddenly abruptly started, and then they just keep happening. Being able to search the EPUBs now, it's hilarious, guys.
Would you
Here's-
like to
here's
come,
the-
just
here's
sit
the
here
count-
so they
no.
can hear you for sure, or at least come over here?
No,
Slightly.
I
All right,
have my
fine. Then
computer
talk louder.
closed.
Just in general.
They can hear me in the videos.
Okay.
Having searched the EPUBs, the F-bomb gets dropped 3 times total in the first book, All Systems Red. The F-bomb is dropped 9 times in Artificial Condition, 12 times in Rogue Protocol, 24 times in Exit Strategy, 38 times in Fugitive Telemetry, 60 times in Network Effects, and 94 instances of the F-bomb in System Collapse alone. 94 times.
Just read off those numbers in order.
What? It goes from 3, 9, 12, 24, 38, 60, 94. This is like that meme of the kaiju thing.
That's like
That-
an actual exponential fucking thing.
I don't know, I gotta look up the meme.
If Martha Wells weren't a shit writer, I would think maybe she's trying to tell us something with math. Doing math research. I'm eating some cheese. So it literally goes 3, what is it? 3, 6, 9, 12?
3, 9, 12, 24, 38, 60, 94.
Jesus Christ.
In the beginning, the F-bombs were spaced apart. 3 F-bombs per...
1 in 10,000 words.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, because there's around 30,000 words in All Systems Red.
I don't know how many words are in the rest of them.
Well, just say that.
But for the meme purposes. In the beginning, the kaiju attacks were spaced, or the F-bombs were spaced apart by 1 in every 10,000 words. Then every 9,000, then every 6,000, then every 3,000, then every 1,000. Blah 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 blah. The actual meme of it is, in the beginning, the kaiju attacks were spaced apart by 24 weeks, then 12, then 6, then every 2 weeks. The last one in Sydney was a week. In 4 days, we could be seeing a kaiju every 8 hours until they are coming every 4 minutes. Marshall, we should witness a double event within 7 days. says Owen Harper. Who is it? I don't
I
actually
hated
know the character's name.
Yeah, I hated Pacific Rim. And that's not helping at all. Like, you have to give me an explanation for how this ecosystem is supposed to be working. They're not magical things as far as I know. Where are they spawning in from? Another universe?
Some of these have like half a dozen F-bombs on the exact same page. Sometimes like 5 of them in the same sentence. It's really fucking funny.
Read one.
Let me find the most hilarious one. And just scrolling through the Kindle. Hopefully it doesn't freeze.
And this happened in the fantasy series too, even though they're on a completely different planet where they're not speaking English, but all of a sudden, was it just in the last 2 books? All of a sudden, they all start just, like, using the F-bomb. Just saying fuck for no reason. And it's like, but that's not even a word you should know. And it just comes out of fucking nowhere, and I think the answer is that was when she was starting to write the Murderbot Diaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the fact that there's 12 chapters in System Collapse, and there's almost 100 uses of the F-bomb, whereas the first few novels had, the first 3 novels had, had 24 total spread across 3 books, and then System Collapse has almost 100 in just that single tiny-ass, quote-unquote, novel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, yeah, I can see why everybody's talking about Murderbot just getting flanderized and her literally just relying on dropping the F-bombs to sound relatable instead of actually doing something with the prose.
System Collapse is barely fucking bigger than this thing. Okay, we can continue now.
After that side
quest. Side quest of math. We had everything almost loaded when Pinley said on the comm, "I found it! They had an access code buried in hub system. It wasn't sending them our audio or visual data, or allowing them to see our feed, but it was receiving commands periodically." And it's like, again, you're gonna have to give me a really good fucking explanation for why they weren't taking advantage of all of these opportunities to do this shit. It could have been a thing that Murderbot hacking hub system at the start accidentally prevented them from doing these things without Murderbot being aware of it at all. That could have just been a happy accident. But there's too many fucking inconsistencies and gaps in just basic logic for the so-called antagonists. That's how it removed information from our info and map package, how it sent the commands to the little hopper's autopilot to fail. Yeah, I have noticed now that you said that she does keep not using the word and, just puts a comma there instead. They pointed out earlier that Martha Wells really doesn't seem to like the word and, so we say, that's how it removed information from our info and map package, comma, how it sent the commands to the little hopper's autopilot to fail, instead of just saying, that's how it removed information from our info and map package and how it sent the command to the little blah 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 blah. Gerthen added, both the hoppers are clear now. Wow, that fan really does all the work. I turned it off in case it was loud, but now it's hot. So, that fan's good. Gerthen added, both the hoppers are clear now, and I've initiated the pre-flight checks. Mensa was saying something, but I had just gotten an alert from Sex System. A drone was sending me an emergency signal. A second later, I got the drone's visual of the field where our beacon was installed. The tripod launching column was on its side, pieces of the capsule scattered around. I pushed it out into the general feed. Also, again, I have to point out, these characters are literally not doing anything when Murderbot is unconscious besides rooting around in its brain. Why didn't a single one of these fucking idiots just go out and fly out and check on the beacon while Murderbot was unconscious? Why? Why didn't anybody... Okay, another question. At the second they stopped being able to contact the other fucking survey team and think there's something horribly wrong with them, why didn't they send an emergency signal right then and there? Because that doesn't fucking make any sense. They think there is some kind of natural fucking disaster and that everybody over there might be dead. Why didn't they send the emergency fucking signal? Because even if everybody over there was alive but seriously injured, none of these people are actual fucking doctors. Overse is supposedly trained as a field nurse. Overse is a nurse? Overse is a nurse? It rhymes. Overse is supposedly a trained field paramedic thing, but like we don't get any details on how detailed that training is or what she can and cannot do. Even if they got over there and everybody was alive but seriously injured, they wouldn't be able to do jack shit to help besides hand out band-aids. Why didn't they just send an emergency fucking thing as soon as they stopped being able to contact the other people and assumed they were literally all assuming on their way over there that there was some natural disaster and probably everybody was dead.
Yeah,
What?
Why didn't they set off the other team's beacon? Both of them.
The other
people's same, right?
the other people's thing. They were saying something about it. I already forgot what it is, because we're not supposed to care. Yeah, it's a fucking stupid ass rocket. Like, you're gonna need to explain to me why they didn't just set off their fucking thing before going over there to check. AKA, call 911, AKA setting off the beacon, and then you call 911, and while you're calling 911, you do first aid. Again.
Don't wait until after you've already established that
everybody's dead. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Literally, the second you start actually fucking thinking about the goddamn plot and what these we're supposed to believe that these characters are good people and are good, competent people who aren't going to do just ridiculous things for the sake of doing ridiculous things. They're supposed to be fucking intelligent enough to know you should call 911 if you think a whole bunch of people have just gotten killed in a natural disaster. You should call 911 if somebody might be dead. But they didn't do that. And they still haven't done that. And it's been several days because it took at least a day to fly over there. Oh, you can just open the EPUB and just skim through it and see if it says how long it would take them to fly over the stupid ocean to get to Doubtfall, because I forget. We probably didn't get any actual concrete length of time, but it would have had to have been at least a day. Maybe search for I should go too, or something like that.
Do they actually use the word ocean?
I think so. Or sea. It's one of those two. I pushed it, yeah. A second later, I got the drone's visual field of their stupid-ass beacon in pieces, because this is the first time any of them have bothered to check on it, supposedly.
Okay. I just searched for beacon in the EPUB.
Okay.
And Rathy said, the thing that worries me is that their emergency beacon didn't launch. If the habitat was breached, or if there was a medical emergency they couldn't handle, their hub system should have triggered the beacon automatically.
But then they still don't call 911 themselves by launching their own beacon. It's not like... Okay, A, it's not like they would have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to do the beacon. And B, they're disgustingly rich. And C, they're not supposed to care about money. They should be prioritizing people's safety over the money, even if it did cost money, which it doesn't. It doesn't cost anything for them to set off their fucking beacon to call 911 because, hey, we've been talking to these other people on their habitat and they've stopped responding and we think there's something horrible happened.
Yeah, and immediately followed by that conversation, they also then say, Finley was calling up specs for the beacons. Aren't the emergency beacons designed to trigger even if the rest of the comm equipment is destroyed? And Murderbot says they're supposed to, but equipment failures aren't unknown. And then they still don't go out and trigger their own beacon as a safety precaution.
Again, this is things have to happen because that's the plot that Martha Wells wants to write. Whether any of it makes sense in any fucking way for the characters to go along with, to the point that she had to break the fucking fourth wall over here on page 94 and just tell us, stop complaining that it doesn't make sense. It totally makes sense, even though it doesn't. I pushed the video of the fact that their stupid phone to call 911 with, to phone home with, is broken. I pushed it out into the general feed, and the humans went quiet. In a little voice, Rathy said, "Shit." "Keep moving," Mensa said over the comm, her voice harsh. With hub system down, we didn't have any scanners up, but I had widened the perimeter as far as it would go. A thing we already said! Why are we just repeating ourselves? We are literally just, like...
Gotta pad out that workout.
This seems like Martha Wells, like, wrote this whole section of the book several months before writing this, and is just, like, repeating herself because she didn't bother to even reread what she already wrote here. Why do we keep repeating everything? We have literally established... It's just ridiculous. Like, search... I widened the perimeter, just search as far as it would go. Because that's referring to the perimeter. And I know they just fucking said that shit, like, just a few pages ago, if not the immediate page before this. This is getting ridiculous. Yeah, literally. No, wait. Okay, no, that's for about the beacon. Stupid bullshit. Are you searching for that?
What?
Search the All Systems Red EPUB for as far as it would go.
See how many times it shows up?
Yeah, because I'm on page 98, and they're just, again, repeating the thing that we just fucking established a few pages ago as though this is the first time it's being said.
No, it just appears the
Or
words.
just
At least
as
with that
far
sentence.
as.
That's probably also just going to come up with as far as I knew.
Alright, I'll just open it on mine. Where'd my bookmark go? Yeah, literally. This doesn't tell me, I guess we could do math. The EPUB doesn't tell me page numbers, obviously, because it's digital, but it's telling me we first said I had extended our drone perimeter as far as it could go at 61%, and then at 62%, which I think is just one page later. I know what general paragraph shape to look for now. Okay, that's on the same page as you have to think of it as a person in parentheses. So, okay. So, yeah, literally page 96. Murderbot states, I had extended our drone perimeter as far as it could go. And then again on page 98, it's, where'd it go? Hold on. Where'd it go? With hub system down, we didn't have any scanners up, but I had widened the perimeter as far as it would go. We already said that literally 2 pages ago, and we are just repeating so many fucking things as though we didn't all watch them standing around in that fucking room, doing nothing but saying this shit and accomplishing nothing else, and now they're just repeating it all again. Like, oh my god, this is ridiculous.
Tor claims to have edited these things.
Yeah, Tor claims to have edited this. Lee Harris, in particular, edited by Lee Harris. who can't even fix a typo as blatant as a missing space. Go to the rapport and see if those fucking typos are still there. I forgot to keep counting the days that have passed.
Still there.
Yeah, the fucking typos, the blatant typos in rapport, a thing that's supposedly professionally edited and published, that's up on their fucking website for everybody to read, that still has all of the blatant fucking typos that you would find in a fucking fan fiction that somebody posts at 3 a.m. Because they're like, I'm not reading it again, I'm not editing it again, it's done, it's 3 a.m. Good night. At 3 a.m. It's got the typo of a missing space, dialogue in the completely wrong format, and a section where, again, you're going to hear me say this dozens of times if you're watching all my videos, because I'm never going to stop complaining about it, because it's literally just showing the actual quality that this fucking publisher is pushing out and pretending is professional and is worthy of exorbitant amounts of money. There's literally a spot where somebody, instead of pushing enter to start a new paragraph, they somehow managed to push shift enter. And it's just left in there. And it's still in there. That was published July 10th or June 10th?
I already closed the tab.
Okay.
So no.
I think that was published on July 10th. It might be June 10th.
I think it's funny they don't include rapport in that Humble Bundle pack.
Uh-huh.
Even though you gotta pay for that ebook.
Yep.
So people buy it thinking it's a new installment.
Because that's what it's listed as. Yep. Blah, 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 blah. With hub system down, we didn't have any scanners up, but I had widened the perimeter as far as it would go, as though that's new information. And Sex System had just lost contact with one of the drones to the far south. I tossed the last crate into the cargo hold, gave the drones their orders, and yelled over the comm, "They're coming! We need to get in the air now!" It was unexpectedly stressful, pacing back and forth in front of the hoppers, waiting for my humans, because we have now graduated to referring to the slave owners as Murderbot's humans, as though it's a cute little... Murderbot's possessive of its slave owners. Murderbot cares so much about its slave owners that it's calling them my humans, because Murderbot's slave owners are the best slave owners, and Martha Wells wants us to think that slave owners are awesome and good and deserve to be protected. Murderbot is so stressed out, hoping its slave owners will stay safe. Valescu came out with Baradwaj, helping her over the sandy ground. Again, basic questions I have to ask here. If Baradwaj is still struggling to walk, why didn't you just have her sit in the fucking hopper waiting? This is ridiculous. This is fucking ridiculous. Then Overs and Arada, bags slung over their shoulders, yelling at Rathi behind them to keep up, because we have to keep yelling at Rathi, because Rathi is a brown man, so he is the designated fucking comic relief. Garathan was already in the big hopper, and Mensa and Pinley came last. They split up. Pinley, Valescu, and Baradwaj headed for the little hopper, and the rest to the big one, for no fucking reason. It's not even plot relevant. Like, the little hopper... I'm sorry for if you're really not looking for spoilers, if this is your chosen way to read this book or experience this book, because I'm reading it, you're not. You're listening. Sorry if you didn't want spoilers, but it's the little hopper, spoiler alert, it's not gonna blow up or anything. So there's literally no purpose for them being in two different helicopters. Nothing is ever going to go on with the little fucking hopper in any way that justifies it existing. It's not like it's gonna blow up and they all die. That doesn't happen. It's just there for no fucking reason. It's ridiculous. It's bad writing. I made sure Baradwaj didn't have trouble with the ramp. We had a problem at the hatch of the big... I made sure Baradwaj didn't have trouble with the ramp, but Valescu is already helping her, but we just pretend like that didn't just get stated right there. We had a problem at the hatch of the big hopper where Mensa wanted to get in last, and I wanted to get in last. As a compromise, I grabbed her around the waist and swung us both up into the hatch as the ramp pulled in after us. I set her on her feet and she said, "Thank you, Sec Unit," while the others stared. As though that's a crazy thing to happen. Because, again, it's supposed to be funny. Oh, look, they both want to protect the other. We're talking about a slave and its owners. The people who have fucking enslaved it and have literally spent more than half of this fucking book treating it like a slave. Exactly like the slave they went out of their way to rent out. The helmet made it a little easier, but I was going to miss the comfortable buffer of my security cameras. I stayed on my feet, holding onto the overhead rail as the others got strapped in and Mensa went up to the pilot seat. The little hopper took off first, and she gave it time to get clear before we lifted off. You know, in a story that's competently written, there would be a reason for there being 2 helicopters, and it would be that one of them gets blown up. But not here, because this is shittily written. We were operating on an assumption that since they, whoever they were, didn't know that we knew they were here, they would only send one ship. They would be expecting to catch us in the habitat, and would probably come in prepared to destroy the hoppers to keep us there, and then start on the people. So now that we knew they were coming from the south, we were free to pick a direction. The little hopper curved away to the west, and we followed. I just hoped their hopper didn't have a longer range on its scanners than ours did. And again, I have to point out, there's no reason for this. There's going to be 2 fucking helicopters. We're now on page 100, so let's see what percentage that is. Just for the hell of it at this point. We're now 67% of the way through this fucking story. I could see most of my drones on the hopper's feed, a bright dot forming on the 3 dimensions of the map. Group 1 was doing what I'd told them to do. What do you mean Group 1? And we still don't know how many drones Murderbot has left because that would require just basic setting and basic consistency. Group 1 was doing what I'd told them, gathering at a rendezvous point near the habitat. I had a calculation going, estimating the bogey's time of arrival. And we're just throwing the word bogey in there just to make it seem like it's something that it's not. Right before we passed out of range, I told the drones to head northeast. Within moments, they dropped out of my range. They would follow their last instruction until they used up their power cells. I was hoping the other survey team would pick them up and follow. As soon as they had a visual on our habitat, they'd see the hoppers were gone and know we'd run away. They might stop to search the habitat, but they also might start looking for our escape route. It was impossible to guess which. But as we flew, curving away to the distant mountains, nothing followed us. So we're supposed to somehow believe that little tiny drones are going to resemble on a scanner in any way two giant fucking helicopters filled with people. Somehow. Tiny itty bitty little drones, because the drones are like, what was it? I think they said a measurement. Let me just search drone. Yeah, these drones, they were the small kind, barely a centimeter across. No weapons, just cameras. So somehow, a group of drones, which has to be less than 6 because one of them got blown up. At least 2 that were over in the other fucking habitat. One of them got shot, and another one got shot. So Murderbot cannot have more than 4 drones left. But somehow, things less than a centimeter across... This is less than a centimeter. These drones are less than this across. Somehow, these tiny things flying through the air, smaller than many fucking insects, are somehow going to be picked up on the other people's scanners, and they'll think it's a ship flying away. That's the end of Chapter 5, so now we will be on Chapter 6, but that can be in the next video. This is just so absurd. Alright, bye-bye.